My life be like, yeah. My life be like, yeah.
Hey, good morning, guys. Pops Paladin here. And by user request, we're going to do a little bit of a different video today, and we're going to do how to simulate your tank. A lot of people get up in arms with a controversial topic such as this: is why do you need to sim your tank? Tank DPS doesn't matter, and you can't sim tank survivability. Both of those comments are wrong. And for example, when I go into a heavy damage based fight, and let's say our healers are having a hard time keeping us up because maybe my raid members are taking too much damage, avoidable damage that they shouldn't take at all, but maybe they are because we're learning or something. So I go in running Righteous Protector versus running Seraphim. Now the difference in DPS for me in particular is approximately 400 to 500k DPS difference in a fight, and that's a lot when it comes to making a boss die faster. And some people argue that 500k per second isn't a lot, but if you do the math over a 5-minute fight, you know, that's almost the equivalent of a really bad DPS that we just added to the team. So instead of having 20 guys, we have 20 3/4 of a team, which does make a big difference. But I digress in terms of what I'm talking about. We're going to learn how to sim for it, and I'm going to teach you why and how to do it. Alright, so this is going to be live in progress. You know, it's not a pre-recorded video with me recording on top of it, so I will flub. Please forgive me for that. Bear with me. Let's get this done together. I'm going to shoot from the hip. Pew pew. Guns a-blazing. Alright, let's go. So you need 3 things in order to get this whole shebang started. First off, you need World of Warcraft. Secondly, you need Simulation Craft, and you can get this from simulationcraft.org, and I recommend downloading it to your computer. Now you can run the web-based engine, however you're running it through the web as opposed to running it on your local system, so you know, you deal with that. There is a comparable website called raidbots.com, and they are pretty good at what they're doing, but I would consider them more for hey, I need a really quick sim, run it for me. Simulation Craft is for in-depth simulating, and I'm going to show you why you want to use SimCraft over raidbots in most cases, but raidbots is really nice for hey, a piece just dropped in the raid, I want to know if it's good for me, I'm going to sim it real quick, and yeah, I want to, you know, I want it. So and then the third thing you need is the actual SimC add-on for World of Warcraft. And what SimC add-on is going to do is it's going to take everything that's on my character screen, everything that's in my bags, and it's going to say, here's what you need, copy paste into Simulation Craft. So let's jump into that real quick. Alright, so here we go, /SimC, and here up pops a window. This window pops up and says my name, my level, all non-important things, because I'm going to show you how to modify that to run batch simulations, which is much more important than running a single simulation. Like I said, that's more for like raid bots. Simulation Craft does really good for our batch simulations. Kind of as we scroll down here, you're going to see we jump into talents, and we can modify this in terms of our batches. And we can modify our artifact. Now, artifact looks very scary. There's a lot of code that's built into this one, and the really good way to figure out how to modify the code is in the link that I'm going to put below, how to simulate your character in modifying artifacts. Or you can go to wowhead.com or wowdb.com and dive through the code list that's on there. So what that actually looks like here real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over to my next screen. Alright, hold on. Blam. Before I move on, please join me at player.me/pops for live chats that you just want to leave messages by, or just to get it started. Now this is a new thing, there's not a lot of people on player.me, but it's kind of one of those Twitter type account things for gamers, so join me. Now moving in, wowdb.com. Wowdb.com can pop in terms of let's go for Radiant. Oops. Maybe I should be a little bit more specific, huh? Radiant Lightbringer Gauntlets. Let's just go with this guy. So what Radiant Lightbringer Gauntlets is going to do is, if we look at the top of the screen, we're going to see the item ID code. And this is where we get some of these. And then you move down here and you can specify what level you wanted for any bonuses. And WowDB is kind of a little bit behind. But this is how you can get it off of WowDB. It's not as good as Wowhead, so let's go to Wowhead. And let's look at the Lightbringer Crown, huh? Since that's what I already have in here. So the Lightbringer Crown on Mythic level difficulty, we can change our level of difficulties right down here. Alright, into whatever you want. You can also add any random gear to it. You know, gems, upgrades, and stuff like that. So now what you're actually looking for is when you scroll all the way up to here, and you see this bonus ID. This is what you are noticing on Simulation Craft as to telling it what the actual item is. And so this is the important thing. It'll do the same thing with relics. Man, I can't remember. Chittering Mandible. Here we go. Chittering Mandible. And this is the same thing. 33431467. This is what gets dropped in your artifact. If I flip back over here, it gets dropped into your artifacts and down into these areas right here. We see the 4-digit numbers. All right. So that's what we got. In terms of, as we're scrolling through here, you can see how it lists everything. If you go to, like I said, raidbots.com, it might, instead of saying ID equals what the actual ID is, it might say head equals armament of the rotten mind. And it's looking at what this is saying here, armament of the rotten mind. And then it's attaching your bonus ID to it. As you can see, I only have the heroic level piece right now. But let's go back into SimC and kind of move down here. When we want to sim or speculate if something's better or not, we can also look right into here to see, is there an enchant attached to it? Once again, Wowhead will give you what the number is for the enchant that you're looking for. Or does it have a gem ID, and what gem do you want to put into it? Wowhead, once again, has that information for you. If you don't use haste gems, like you see here, that's a haste gem. And you use crit, you can just go look whatever the crit gem is for that. And kind of as we scroll down a little bit more, so you'll see as we move down, here's my relic IDs. Alright, relic IDs. And then gear in the bag. So now it's going to look and say, here's all the gear that you have sitting inside your bag. SimCraft has a great ability to take gear and combine it together, but you have to tell it to do it. And in order to do that, you have to know the codes. Well, what SimC is doing is it's copying and pasting it for you into SimC, and then all you have to do is add it. What is preventing SimC from looking at this is the pound sign. And this pound sign is saying, do not read any of this, it's technically ghosted out. And that kind of goes into a little bit of software coding language. But it is put there so that way we can quickly grab it and see what's inside our bag. So let us grab all of the SimC stuff right here. Let me SimC snag before I switch screen here. So SimC snag, I copy. Alright, so I copied it. And now let's move over to Simulation Craft. I know I'm bouncing around the screen, aren't I? You like that? Anyways, so in Simulation Craft, when you open it up, the first window that you're going to get is the welcome here. There's a new version. Just check up here in this area. Does this version match this version? Because this is looking at the actual website right here. This page, as long as you're connected to the internet, is looking at the web page. And if these match, you know that you have the most current. Now you can run with nightly builds. I'd be careful with that. Weekly builds are okay. I just go with released because I'm not, you know, that crazy. Unless I'm trying to sim trinkets for the upcoming raid, then I'm gonna run with nightly builds every night until I feel like I'm getting a more consistent number, because I'm looking through all the notes to see, you know, what's updated and what's running correct, what's not running correct. Then the next tab that you're going to see is import. We ignore this one because we have the SimC add-on. Now there's a tab for it that says here, copy paste it. It's also right here. If I go to simulate and add, I can drop it right here. So just ignore the import tab. We no longer need to import from battle.net. It's pretty pointless because we can grab everything out of our bag with just that simple add-on. It takes up no running memory in the game. It's only on demand. So that's just get the add-on. Even if you're a purist, just get the add-on. Come on. The first tab that we actually care about is options. So in the options tab here, I need a quick coffee drink. Hold on. Yes. All right, in the options, the first thing we're going to come up to is ignore, and then iterations. Iterations is how accurate do you want this darn thing to actually be? Do you want it to be down to the minutia, or do you just care about a generalized area? So since I'm going to be running this live, I'm only going to do 100 iterations, but you can see it can go all the way up to 500,000. You're going to be running that sim for, I don't know, a good 12 hours, even if you got a good computer. It's a long iteration. So I'm going to run 100. Now the next big thing I'm going to talk about is length of time of fight, and this gets ignored a lot. When it comes to fights like, let's talk about Harjatan, which for some guilds is going to be a DPS check, or the first DPS check of the instance, where it's a 6-minute fight or you die. Well, if you're making it all the way to the 6 minutes, why would you sim for 300 seconds? That's only a 5-minute fight. So know the fight, know how long it's going to take you, and sim for the correct amount of time for that fight so you can know each fight down the line. Or if you don't care, just go for the standard everybody does 300 seconds, because every fight eventually is a 5-minute fight or less. But that's because you're starting to outgear it. If you're really simming, or you're playing at the cutting edge, or trying to be in a guild that's as cutting edge as they can be, sim for the appropriate amount of time that it's taking you to complete the bosses. Next, variation length. You can vary this all the way up to 50%, so I can add another 3 minutes to this fight, or take 3 minutes away. That's too much. I mean, come on. So I stick in the 10-20% range. So, moving on to fight style. And fight style, you also have to cater to the boss that you're looking to beat. If it's a single target boss, you're going to patchwork fight this. I mean, look, as this little thing pops up. It's a tank and spank fight. Alright, so you'd pick patchwork. If you were thinking of something more like Harjatan, let's talk about that. You would be looking at a, so as we're scrolling down here, heavy movement fight. Or we can do Beast Lord. That would actually be better. A Beast Lord type fight would be Harjatan. Random amounts of ads are coming out. They're coming out in different locations. You're switching to ads. You're switching to boss. You're doing all sorts of things. So pick the fight style that's best. Well, I'm going to do patchwork for this specific instance. But I can show you what a Beast Lord type fight would be. Pretty much all I do is I stick between... Here, let me pop it up again. I stick between patchwork... patchwork, light movement, heavy movement on some fights that just absolutely kick the living crap out of tanks, and Beast Lord. Now they did add this nice beautiful thing called casting patchwork, and that would be like Staager or Atreus. You know, she doesn't actually hit you, but she always casts. So you can try and interrupt rotation kind of thing on there to see how much you can proc your Cephus if that's what you were using at that point in time. Ignore challenge mode, player skill. Now, I always keep it at elite, and that's not to say that I'm an elite style player. It's just I want to see what the absolute max I can get out of my tank and see if I can get as close to that as humanly possible. I do that for my red spec as well, and all the other alts that I play, even though I tell you I don't play alts. But I keep it at elite because I want to know what the absolute max my character can actually output. Depending on what you are, you know, that's what you sim for. But if you're simming your character right now, I'm assuming you're good to elite, you know, level. But whatever it is, because it's actually gonna put in some crazy calculations that are gonna say, all right, an average player would do blank, a good player would do blank, and ouch fire is hot, probably shouldn't be tanking anything less than like normal, maybe not even that. Anyways, moving on. Leave default role as auto, because we're actually gonna tell it what we're gonna do for tank DPS. Or what it's going to read is, and I'm going to flip to one that's already built, it's going to read this, role equals tank. And so that's where that auto is coming from, alright? And then kind of moving on, how many bosses are there? So if this was, let's say it's Demonic Inquisition, there are 2 bosses. And are you hitting them all the time? Probably not. So I would change it from patchwork to maybe light movement, because you do have to move in and out of boss. So it's kind of, you gotta just know the fight, know how it's going. But I'm gonna go with 1 boss on this one, I'm gonna go single target fight, so like Goroth-esque. All right. Okay, ignore TMI. Always uses the standard raid boss type formulas, so keep TMI associated. And right now, it's not updated to T20 yet, so we're still waiting on that. Okay, and kind of moving on through here. World lag. If you play in like Brazil, or I'm sorry, Brazil, you might up your latency. You know, the further away you play from the super upgraded servers, the more latency you're gonna have. That's just a fact. I'm not making fun of Brazil. We have a raider who raids in India, and she always has lag, so she would have to account for that. Now, typically, my world lag is 8 milliseconds, but I leave mine at 100 milliseconds in case for some reason we get a lag spike in the middle of things. Maybe I have a power outage or something like that, so I just leave it at the standard 100. But if you are Google fibered out in California, you probably have 2 millisecond lag. So let's just go super low on this one, huh? All right. I don't want it to generate debug because I don't care. I don't have pets. Deterministic RNG, that would be... let's just ignore that for right now. We're just doing tanks. Let's move on to the next subheading. Buffs, debuffs. Obviously we want a bloodlust on this because we are going to bloodlust sometime in the fight. We could specify when to bloodlust if we wanted to specifically write it into our logs, but that's getting way down there and kind of bleeding and doing on that. So, and then our debuffs are going to be bleeding and mortal wounds because it wants to actually kill us. So you could turn that off if you just want to stay alive the whole time, but it's fine to leave it on there. So scaling. Scaling's the next important thing. If you want to say things like, hey, I want to know the scale for strength, don't do stamina, whatever for attack power, that's just adding level. So crit, haste, mastery, versatility, these are the things that we're looking for right now because they're the only viable items right here. What you're going to want to do is make sure this center scale delta, when you first install it, it's going to say no. You want to make sure you change this to yes, and then you want it to scale over DPS. All right, scale over DPS, because when you scale over DPS, it's going to quickly change some parameters in the background and say, all right, this is what you're actually looking for the scale to do for you, not a whole bunch of other additions. Don't do raid DPS because it's going to try to include additional parameters that you don't care about, just DPS. And then the last important thing to do, because I've done this when I'm really tired, like at 3 in the morning, still running sims for the next raid tier, is I forget to check enable scaling. So you just want to make sure that you check it, and then it's going to run an even longer log string. Do not run a 500,000 string with scaling enabled. It's going to be like weeks before it's done. You're going to already down the mythic boss and be like, oh, well, oh, my scaling finished. But you do have to click enable for this to actually work. Alright, we're going to skip the next two. We're going to move right into simulate. Alright, so let's start with our new guy that we pulled in. So we're going to come in here and we're going to paste right in. Alright, let me scroll to the top here. Alright, so if I simmed right through here and I said, alright, this is what I'm wearing, what's the DPS I'm supposed to get? All I'll do is I'll go down here and I'll click simulate. Alright, super simple. Bam! So this would be in non-modified mode. I didn't do anything to it. All I did was copy paste my character, and you saw I didn't do anything fancy, and it says I should do 556,000 DPS. Okay, this simulation is wrong, okay, because, and I'm gonna scroll, I'm gonna keep scrolling, and where is it? Right here. Constant buffs. It put Flask of 10,000 scars on me, so it added a stam flask for me, and it did Sea Battered Fish Plate, which I believe is versatility. No, Simcraft, no. It also changed the order in which I use my abilities, and it doesn't have an action priority list that is simulated appropriately for DPS tanking. And you can see what the action priority list is by scrolling all the way down here, and it tries to tell you these are the things that I prioritize in terms of living, not in terms of actually doing damage, because it's reading us as tank right now. Alright, so let's go in and actually tell it what we should do. I'm going to delete this so you can actually see, and I'm going to go back to an old previous log that I have, and I'm going to copy paste this action priority list. What this is going to say is use defiled, augment rune, flask of countless armies, use a sorry salad, and then this is the priority in which you go through and you use it. Now, use item name. We're going to want to input the trinket if it has a use on command. So let's first copy this and let's move this over to simulate. All right, and I'm just going to put it right below here. All right, and let's enter that out of there. And so my trinket is my use trinket. I'm flipping back here, guys. Bear with me. I gotta get the name exactly correct. Vial of ceaseless toxins. Use vial. The underscore is very important. Of ceaseless toxins. Make sure I spell this correct, because if you misspell it, it hates you. And you do not need to capitalize it. In fact, you should put it into lowercase. So, vial of ceaseless toxins, exactly as written. Perfect. Okay, let us move back into getting this simmed now. Now it's going to say, alright, you have all of this gear. You're going to run it like this. This is what the person's going to wear, and this is how they're going to actually run their priorities. Now I'm going to simulate again. Now what you're going to see is I get a completely different DPS number. It's about 100k more per second running as my DPS priority list than the tank priority list. So you see that APL is super important to have in there if you want to know what your tank can be maximized as. And also, if you have an on-use command trinket, you have to tell it to use it as well. Alright? And so as we scroll down here and I go down, you will see, hey, I did use the Asari Salad. I did have a defiled augmentation rune on there, and I used Flask of the Countless Armies instead of using a stam flask. And so that's why the APL that we have here, and I didn't write it, I got it off of, forget where, it was a long time ago. It was offline, MMO Champion probably. But I've just been copy pasting it for a long time, and then I just modified what the name of the food is, or the rune, or what the current flask name is. So as we kind of scroll down here and we check the action priority list, you can see it pulled exactly what my action priority list was. And you noticed that previously when we simmed as tank, the action priority list was 3-4 times the size of what it is now. Now it's just this tiny little thing that says use this as the priority. Alright, so now you can see how important that is to actually sim what your DPS is. Okay, now let's talk quickly about survival tanking and how you can read it. Let me get rid of this action priority list. How you can read it and learn from it, but not necessarily rely on it. You can't say, look, I'm going to live better with this gear on all bosses at all moments of time than this gear. You can figure it out a little bit, but at the same time, it's not a dead set thing. It's survival tanking is all about your playing. How good, how well you play your character determines if you're going to survive or not. There's no computer program that can tell you you will live. Now, if you were trying to use something like Ask Mr. Robot in terms of trying to get what their NOPES is, or the NPS of are you going to die, probability of death, you can't predict that. Plus, they don't even have the current bosses on there, and the way to write a boss in terms of predicting if you're going to die or not is so complicated with so many variables, never taking into effect how good your healers are, how much damage your raid's taking. It's not a dead set number. What you need to look at it as is it's a way to determine if in fact this gear gives me a little bit better survival than this gear. Okay, let me flip real quick while we are while we're here. We're gonna flip right back into here, and we are gonna change my spec here. And you're gonna see all of the gear that I have on here, and as I flip over to my survival spec, I change into what my legendaries are and what my trinkets are, Alright? And let's SimC this up again. And copy. And let's flip back to SimCraft again. Alright. Let us simulate, and we're going to call this one DPS tank. And we'll call this one survival tank. Serve tank. Alright. And let's copy paste that back in here. Bam. Let's get rid of all this BS right here for the moment. And let's just say, alright, simulate it, please. This is what I want you to take a look at, alright? So I gotta rename this one again. This one was DPS tank, so we know which tab we're looking at. Now let's take a look at this TMI. Alright, ooh, this wasn't deep. No, it wasn't. This was the DPS one, sorry. DPS tank. This one was technically DPS with tank APL list. Tank APL. Alright. So look at the TMI difference here. 274k, 220k, see TMI, and survival tank 153.4 TMI. Now what does TMI actually mean? And that's the Thek-Moray index, which was invented a long time ago, back when Thek was still tanking and still the name in Paladin tanking in terms of surviving through raid bosses. But this metric is still here because even though people try to poo-poo on it and say it doesn't mean anything, you can't sim anything, it actually does. All right, and let me tell you why it does. This tank, when I full-on DPS, could care less about survival. This is just for funsies, parsing. I take, and my healers will tell you, a piss load of damage. Because I don't care about when I'm using my abilities. I'm using them to pad my numbers. Alright? When I play a DPS style tank, but smartly, in terms of I'm going to live and make sure I can do a lot of damage, but survive-ish, I take less damage. And TMI is telling me this. Alright? And then I say, I don't care a damn about my DPS. All I want to do is survive this fight. So I might hold abilities to make sure I live. And TMI is once again telling me that yes, you can do that. Now I did say the word abilities and TMI. What this is also looking at is the amount of versatility I have on my tank and the amount of mastery. And though we say we don't want a lot of mastery on our prop paladin because it's not great, currently my mastery is at like 25%, but I have 41% block. It is working. TMI is telling me that yes, this setup should take less damage on an even keel damage fight. And that is the key thing that you need to take from here. On an even keel damage based fight. This is the boss hitting you for the same amount of damage every attack. Now we know that this doesn't happen when it comes to fights like, let's just use Harjatan for example. You're tanking Harjatan, great. You got 1 stack, 2 stack, 3 stacks, 4 stacks. Oh, you're taking a lot of damage, 5 stacks. Your OT comes in with a slow taunt and you have the adds. Obviously you're going to super spike in damage until that other tank taunts off you and your stacks drop off, and now maybe you just have adds, and now you're taking a really low amount of damage. We know that as tank ability, you have to use your spells in certain areas in order to live. So when those adds come out, that's when I'll pop Eye of Tear, so it hits all of them, not for the damage increase, but for the damage they do reduction. That's the only reason why I would use that. But if I was doing DPS style tank, maybe I might pop it right as it's there and then rotate around the boss and start hitting the boss in the back so I don't get parried. So kind of moving on here. So TMI does good for you. It's not something that the building blocks of your tanking should be like. This one says TMI of 100, the other one says TMI of 170. Why am I dying? Once again, you still have to play your class well. This is just giving you a heads up to say, yeah, the gear that you're choosing truly is reducing the amount of damage that you're taking on an even keel. Alright, so it's one of those give and take metrics. Now let's talk about batch simulating. So what I already have here, I came in and this is when I was sim crafting all the trinkets that were going to come into the new raid. And what you're going to notice here is when I come into individual trinkets, all right, I change my name. So my name is base no trinket, and I have removed all the trinkets from my original. So this is my original, so I'm going to go enter, 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 enter. This is what I would have copy pasted in. I just went and deleted the trinket. So if I were to show you the example straight off the bat, I will just go, you know, whoops, that's right. I was going to do it line by line, but I would just come in and delete. Alright, and then the other thing that you're going to notice here for individual trinkets, I have also removed my main hand offhand. Alright. And the reason why I removed my main hand offhand is because I didn't want it to look at what kind of relics I had in terms of, does he have a Consecration of Flame relic and a Judgment relic and an AD relic, and sim it weird because of some ability that I may or may not have in the Tomb of Sargeras. So I just removed that from the list completely. And so let's flip back to here. On top of that, now we have to create what we call copies. All right, this is going to be the longest process of here. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go from head down. You see here's my main hand offhand up here as the normal spec. I just moved it, okay? Because I did delete it and then I moved it. I didn't mention that, sorry. I moved it up to the top and then I just said, all right, here's head down to trinket. And I copied it. Copy. And then I pasted it here. All right. And then above it, you then have to say, this is a copy. So I want you to look at what is missing from here. All right. And I could have technically just gone blit and deleted everything. And just said, copy, run trinket to make this easier. And then I want to say what the trinket is. So Leviathan's Hunger, and I'm using base because base is nothing. I'm simming an individual trinket here. Base, no trinket. That's the name of it. And then I want to say, all right, trinket 1 is going to be, and because I've already written it, here's my trinket 1. And I'm going to paste it in here. Paste. Well, let's paste it in the right spot, huh, guys? Paste. And then I technically made this same duplicate. Alright. And you would run that through for everything that you want. And as you can see, I'm running an individual to see which trinket is technically considered the best trinket. And then I also did trinkets combined. So I ran all of the trinkets together in combination. So I made sure, you know, this trinket was with all of these, and then I moved on and, you know, process of elimination covered each trinket paired with the other trinket. Only that of Tomb of Sargeras. Now, could I have gone through all the rest of them? Yes, I could, but I only cared about what was in the Tomb of Sargeras. Let's go back to individual trinkets. 100 sims, so there's a whole bunch of these. Here's my action priority list because it's still technically DPS style. And then I also had to say, hey, these are the on-use trinkets, so please use these trinkets if you see it in the list. And then I click sim. And this one takes a little bit longer because there's a lot to sim through, but you can see my bar is almost done. And bam, here pops up the list. So now what I'm looking at is what, and I want you to know that this is still bugged. Feverish Carapace is still bugged. Do not get that for a DPS tanking trinket. It is not, okay? But if you look at this, we can look at what technically is made up here in a nice list for us. So you can see that if I had no trinkets, I would obviously take more damage, but it's wrong because Reliquary of the Damned, if I use it on command, I might take less. So once again, please don't look at this. The Thek is also not correct either because Feverish is bugged. So, alright. And then healing, just ignore this as well. We're just looking at damage per second. So, taking out Feverish Carapace and looking at what's actually in here, these ones are simming correctly right now. And what you can note is on the individual trinket right here, individual trinket list, our Tarnished Sentinel Medallion is still simming the highest for us, so if we can find one of those, great. If not, whatever. And then it kind of moves down from there. And this is where I'm running Vial of Ceaseless, and I'm running Infernal Cinders, because I also believe Infernal Cinders is not simming correctly for the sheer fact that I don't have other raid members in my Simcraft. Obviously, if I were to say Infernal Cinders times 4 raid members with Infernal Cinders, I would get a 40% crit increase than a 10% crit increase, which would obviously increase the damage that I do. So this is a way to sim multiple items. Can I do it with gear? Yeah, you're darn right you can. It just takes a while for you to figure out what you want to type in and out. So it all comes down to what your copy is. Alright, let's scroll all the way back up here. What your copy is and what you're changing. So all you write in here is what you change, but because I was just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, I just didn't get rid of these, but it is still the same. And then you would just name it what you wanted to. Alright, this name right here has to be listed in there somewhere for it to say this is what I'm comparing, this is the new thing. Alright, so this name has to be in here. And then I changed it for base no trinket because I was doing trinkets, but as here you see it's still Pops Pinto, and all it does is it goes boom, trinket, trinket, trinket base, because here's the name, trinket base, base no trinket, base no trinket, Pops Pinto, trinket base, trinket base. Alright, so just got to make sure that the original name is in there versus the new name that you're adding into it to compare it to. So if I were to run trinkets combined, just to give you a quick update, now this list is even longer, so it's going to take even longer to simulate this one. But to give you a good comparison as to what this specific list will look like, you're going to start to understand why people post these, hey, this thing's better than this, and this is why you need to look for it. However, take all things with a grain of salt, because it all also depends on your playstyle, what talents you're running, and pretty much what your class is actually doing for relics and for positioning and for abilities that you do. Like Kill Jaden, for the first 10 seconds of the fights, I'm soaking in Armageddon, so obviously my damage is going to be lower. So you have to keep that in mind too. Anyways, when we go through here, I had to use code because I didn't want the list to be long, because it would pop the names off the screen too far. So you could see that, you know, what is this? Man, I can't even. I'm having a hard time with this one. Whatever. So it would tell me what the combination. I even forgot what they were. What the combination is to give me the best DPS possible. So if I can get these two trinkets together, I should, in theory, have the best DPS available for a prop paladin. And that's how Simcraft should be used. All right. So there's Vial of Ceaseless Toxins and Infernal Cinders right down there. So this is what I'm currently rocking. Which is way down the list, right? Way down the list. And you can see on this specific one, I removed Feverish because I knew it was bugging. So you're just looking at that and how it goes. And just look at the damage per second, because heals, absorbs, damage taken, and Thek is not going to help you for this specific style of simming. After that, there's some overrides that you could type in here, but really we did all of our overrides when we wrote it in here. Alright, if you're having a little bit of trouble figuring out what to do, there's always this nice, beautiful help window, but it also has not been updated for a long time, alright, because a lot of people do videos like this, and so they're just relying on users to help them keep them up there. So, and then if you have an error, it's going to spit it out here to log. And if you're wondering what a spell is, don't use this. Go to WowDB or wowhead.com. Other than that, I really hope that this kind of gave you a good view as to how to sim your character, why to do certain things to sim your character, what the metrics are that you're kind of looking at. Like when we go back to survival tank, just because you can compare what should I be using and what should my damage be coming from. Does Warcraft logs also compare that to the same thing? And am I running the same amount of percentages in terms of use, abilities, and everything like that? Really, I hope that this helped you out tremendously. I wish you all the best in the Tomb of Sargeras. Please stay tuned for my next videos. I know I've been really lacking on it, but I've kind of lost a slight bit of interest in WoW due to some problems. But I'm picking back up the pace again. Expect some of my videos to start coming out as Ret. Fuck, I hate Ret. But other than that, guys, I do wish you all the best on your loots, and have a great rest of the morning. I'll catch you later.